Good evening, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining tonight's THF Conversations, Back to School with Sesame Workshop, an innovative approach on inclusion and diversity education. We're so honored to host two incredible individuals from Sesame Workshop this evening, and we're so very happy that you're all here with us tonight, watching and listening from wherever you are. My name is Phil Grum, and I'm the Senior Manager of Learning Services and On-Site Programs for the Henry Ford, as well as your host for this evening. Tonight's conversation is being brought to you by both the Henry Ford and our educational platform, inHub. For those of you who are new to us, the Henry Ford, located in Dearborn, Michigan, is a globally recognized destination with an incomparable collection that consists of 26 million two-dimensional and three-dimensional artifacts that represent an unprecedented window into America's traditions of innovation, ingenuity, and resourcefulness. In addition to our 5 unique venues, Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation, Greenfield Village, the Ford Rouge Factory Tour, the Benson Ford Research Center, and the Giant Screen Theater Experience, we are also home to Henry Ford Academy, a public charter high school. We educate about 500 9th through 12th grade students on our campus. And you may or may not know, but in June this year, we launched our new educational platform called inHub. We like to think of it as a virtual venue that offers access to curriculum resources, rich digital learning content, professional development, and experiences that use artifacts and stories of the past and present to empower an innovative mindset and inspire the next generation of innovators, inventors, and entrepreneurs. inHub's goal is to build a community of practice that's working to reduce the innovation opportunity gap. We want all learners to have the opportunity to achieve their full innovative potential. If you're interested in more information, be on the lookout for an email following this webinar. Now, we are really excited, as I said, to host 2 industry leaders, Dr. Rosemarie Truglio and Akimi Gibson here tonight from Sesame Workshop. And before I formally introduce them and hand it off, I just want to mention one thing. As we progress through tonight's program, if you have any questions for myself or our speakers, please submit them using the Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar. As time allows, towards the end, we'll address these questions after we hear from the both of them. Speaking of which, let's start with some introductions. So Dr. Rosemarie Truglio, who is the Senior Vice President of Curriculum and Content at Sesame Workshop. Dr. Truglio is responsible for the development of the interdisciplinary curriculum on which Sesame Street is based and oversees content development across platforms like television, publishing, toys, home video, and theme park activities. That sounds like a pretty cool job. She also oversees the curriculum development for all new show production, including Esme and Roy, airing on HBO. Dr. Truglio received a PhD in developmental and child psychology from the University of Kansas and a BA in psychology from Douglas College, Rutgers University. She received distinguished alum awards from Douglas College, University of Kansas, Rutgers University, and the University of Kansas Women's Hall of Fame. Welcome, Rosemarie. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And our second speaker tonight will be Akimi Gibson. She has a dual role at Sesame Workshop. As VP of an educational publisher of the Media and Education Division, she leads the formal learning initiatives, partnerships, and business for the workshop. The focus of this group is to leverage the power of research-proven media to enhance and advance teaching and learning from preschool to grades 3. The group is focused on aligning and synchronizing the elements that define high-quality early childhood education in order to reach personalized learning for each child and grown-up by taking a dual generational approach. Additionally, Gibson leads the racial justice content synergy work as part of the creative and production division. This role partners with internal leaders across the workshop to develop and strengthen a shared vision and provide assurance and coordination for the organization-wide initiative coming together, which you'll hear about tonight. Prior to joining Sesame Workshop, Gibson was Deputy Executive Director at NAEYC, where she oversaw the professional development, publications, marketing and communications, and sales departments. She also holds several leadership positions at Scholastic Inc. She's also a children's book author, a former program admin, teacher educator, and literacy coach. Welcome. We're so excited to have both of you. And so without further ado, please join me in virtually welcoming both Dr. Rosemarie Truglio and Akimi Gibson, a little bit about Sesame Workshop, the work they do, and coming together, their commitment to racial justice. So with that, Dr. Truglio, I will hand it off to you.
We are an educational media company, so what better way than to start with a little video that is an overview of all the work that we're doing and how we're meeting our Sesame Workshop mission. So Sesame Workshop's mission is to help kids grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. And this mission has not changed, but how we address this mission has evolved over the years because we know that the needs of kids and families have changed. And Sesame is there to create content to meet both the educational needs of children, the health needs of children, and also to address societal issues. As you can see in that video, we're currently focused on racial justice, which we're going to be focusing a lot of our attention on tonight. So when Joan Gans-Cooney, our co-founder, came up with this idea of Sesame Street, it was an experiment to see how we could harness the power of television to prepare children, in particular disadvantaged children who did not have access to early childhood education, to be better prepared for school. But not just for school, but for life. Sesame Street is grounded in a real street, in a real neighborhood. It's live action, it's not animation. And our characters reflect real children, even though they are monsters and fairies and grouches and an 8-foot Big Bird. How we write for them and how they are portraying themselves really do meet the developmental attributes of their age. So next slide, please. So what does it mean to be smarter, stronger, and kinder? So Sesame Workshop has what we call a whole child curriculum. We have always been committed to all aspects of child development. So when we talk about smarter, yes, it is those academic skills, which are very important, but it's not just those skills. It's how children learn, those executive function skills, which are the processing skills that we've been highlighting. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So those two areas really make up what we're labeling smarter. Stronger also has two components. Yes, it's your physical health, but it's also your mental health, resiliency skills, and really focusing on those self-regulation skills to help children manage their emotions through various strategies. The third piece of it is kinder, is really about how we are all needing to have respect and understanding, respect and understanding of self as well as other. Building those building blocks around empathy and compassion, and building friendships and resolving conflicts, because as we know, most of the conflicts come about among your friends. The other piece of kinder is you can't really take yourself out of yourself and focusing on someone else if you yourself are not self-regulated. So this whole idea of being mindful and having mindfulness strategies so you can take care of yourself so that you can then be there and assist someone else. It's sort of like when you're on an airplane and you're traveling with a child, they said if the oxygen masks come down, put the oxygen mask first on yourself so that you could then help your child. Next slide, please. So our approach to school readiness, as you can see, is very comprehensive. It's very holistic, but it's integrated. And so, yes, we're focusing on all of these core domains, but at the core of this Venn diagram is what we call these executive function self-regulation process strategies, because these are the key skills that helps us all learn content. So next slide, please. Now you look at Sesame and you say, oh, well, we create wonderful content for children. It's a children's show, but I'm going to change that mindset here. Yes, we create content to children, but in order for us to meet our mission and address the educational needs of children, reaching children alone is not going to have us have the greater educational impact that we are striving for. So first of all, let's start with the show. I encourage all adults to watch the show with children because in many ways, it is a parenting show. We have these wonderful human cast members who represent that parent-child interaction and are modeling how we could be addressing children's questions, but more importantly, how to support their overall growth and development. And there's a lot of humor for the families to enjoy. Sesame Street is always written on two levels, to embrace the adults and not saying this is a child-only viewing experience. And also we have these wonderful celebrities who come on and are always welcomed on Sesame Street. In addition to that, we create wonderful resources for families through our website. Akimi will be talking more about formal education. That's a big component of our mission, and the broader community. So I wanted to point out this web address, sesamestreetincommunities.org, and I encourage you all to go and see the wonderful resources that we have for parents and educators, and all of it is free, and it does cut across that whole child's curriculum. So next slide, please. The other thing that I recently did is I wrote a parenting book, and I wanted to provide parents a wonderful resource on school readiness so that they have a better understanding that it's not just the academic skills. Oops. But as you can see from the table of contents, where it is addressing all aspects of child development. But what's unique about this book is that it is filled with tips and activities to help parents know that children learn best through play, and they learn best through everyday activities. And so I'm not asking parents to be educators, I'm asking them to be co-learners with their children. So a big part of this book is, if you don't know the answer, let's find out together. And the other thing about this book is that for each content area, there are the developmental progression milestones, so that parents can have an understanding of, well, where can I help my child so that they could be on target for having all of those school readiness skills and be ready for school. But also understanding that all children develop on their own timetable. And these are just guideposts to help direct. Next slide, please. So the other thing that I wanted to share with you, because this often doesn't get talked about, is what we call the Sesame Workshop model in action. It's sort of like our peek behind the curtain secret sauce. How do you manage to create such wonderful educational content that is appealing and entertaining, but is so focused on curriculum goals and meeting the needs of kids? So it's that middle part of that screen that I give Joan Gans-Cooney all credit, because she said, in order for us to create a television show that will be engaging, because we know that we could have the greatest educational content, but if children don't want to watch it, we're not going to be meeting our mission. We have to work collaboratively in the development of the content. So she says we have to really think out of the box. And so we have to listen to those educators, the ones who actually know about curriculum and how to create curriculum goals that are age appropriate, to help us think about how to start developing the content, and work closely with the developmental psychologists who know the best practices in terms of how best children learn. But more importantly, bringing the test content out to children, making sure that we're creating content that children want to watch, but more importantly, can comprehend. So our intended messages are actually being understood by our target audience, the preschool children. Now, educators and developmental psychologists don't often work hand in hand. So that's an interesting collaboration. And now we're going to bring in production. Those are the script writers, the animators, the filmmakers, the lyricists, and how do we all now work together? And so there's an interesting tension that happens. And every year we say it's an experimental year. So we're right now starting to work on season 53. Yes, so we've celebrated our 50th anniversary, and we're saying 50 years and more and counting. So how to resolve it? So there's an interesting tension, but what is really important is this formative evaluation, because as Joan said, we could all be experts in our particular areas, but it's the real experts are the children, because if we're not getting it right, the children aren't broken, we got it wrong, and we have to go back and fix it. So it starts with, what needs are we going to address with each new year? We have a curriculum seminar, bringing in those educational advisors. I work with my team on developing the revised curriculum. We start to write, show scripts, test them with the children, go into production, distribute it, and then there is a summative evaluation, because we want to make sure that we actually are not only meeting these needs, but we're successfully making an impact in the lives of children and families. So next slide, please. So currently on air is season 51, and the need that we are addressing is positive approaches to learning. And how this came about is once again through this research, learning that children are coming to school, and there was a little bit of a gap there with COVID. We'll talk about that later, maybe. But teachers were letting us know that they were coming to school, and when they ran into a challenge or a problem, they were saying, you need to fix this, or you need to help, or I can't do this by myself. So what happened to that sense of wonder and curiosity and creativity, and that trial and error, and let's try something, let's see what happens, let's learn from it, and have that perseverance. So not shy away when we have a problem, but to embrace it as a wonderful learning opportunity, which is not only a lesson to help us get ready for school, but it's a life lesson that we've all been dealing with and coping with, especially the challenges of COVID-19. So I want to play our anthem song for season 51. Well, I hope that song is sticking in your head. It's definitely in my head. And I don't know how many of you may have noticed the gestures of I wonder, what if, let's try. Because these gestures are really important. We've learned that through research. In order for children to really understand and grasp these terms, having a physical gesture to mark these words has significantly increased their comprehension of the storyline. So just wanted to let you know why we're doing that. I'm about to transition to Akimi, but before I do that, I mentioned earlier that we're always identifying and addressing the needs of children and families. And we often keep in mind the societal needs of families and children. So we did quite a bit of work when we were all dealing with a pandemic. But then shortly after that, the racial injustice. And once again, we Sesame Workshop knew that we had to create content to address the needs and to address racial justice in an age-appropriate way. And Akimi is going to talk about all of the academic work that we did. But the first thing that we did was we went and we partnered with CNN, and we had a CNN special where Sesame Street actually was very explicit. It's a family audience, it's 3 to 8, and defining what racism is. And those of you who are familiar with our rich history on Sesame Street, we have one of the most diverse and inclusive neighborhoods. And it's not as though we're doing race for the first time. We've been doing it in our history for 50 plus years. But in this particular work, you'll see that it's much more explicit.
So, keeping that in mind, and let's highlight one word that Rosemarie, one of the most important words that Rosemarie said towards the end there, which was being explicit. And so, for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to reveal to you how we made this more explicit, but in a developmentally appropriate way. So, we begin by talking about the Coming Together initiative. And as Rosemarie pointed out, and with Sesame Street and other properties we have, we're going to take you behind the scenes. So let's go to the next slide, please. So before we could do anything at Sesame Street, we had to orient ourselves and we had to ask our organization and one another, what do we stand for? So before we started producing, as we started researching, we gathered and we constructed a set of editorial guidelines. This may be something that individuals in this audience are interested in, and we offer this to you. So we wanted to make sure that we had shared language around our perspective. We had one mind and one specific goal in and on this pursuit, that we understood our approach and that we were working together on our voice. So for example, what it is in terms of our perspective, it's about racial justice. What it isn't, it's not focused on multiculturalism. We love being multicultural, but we needed to be more explicit, if you remember that word. So in that perspective of being racial justice, which means we're working against racism, we understand that racism harms everyone. And as opposed to being colorblind, we want to be color proud. Our goal was towards equity and empowerment. We are approaching this in healing and loving ways. We are focused on impact versus intent. We want to be strengthening. We want to make sure that we can be upstanders for ourselves and one another. Our approach, very proactive. We are not treating this as a moment, we are treating this as a movement, which requires us to take some risks. And we are taking the risks in the most meaningful ways. And this is one of the aspects that we're most proud of here, of being local, meaningful, and relevant. What is of issue within the US is different than what's in the issue, maybe of issues in other parts of the world. What may be of issues in the Vermont may be different than in Detroit. So we are trying to be as local as possible, which is why we're treating this as a whole organization initiative. And finally, but not least, we are authentic. We are them and they are us. So we are using this notion of we, us, and ours versus you, them, and their. And we are hopeful versus working in despair. So with that in mind, we went to work. Next slide. So in that work, we had to begin at the beginning. So we could have taken a lot of different approaches here. So when we gathered together, educators, Rosemarie, myself, Jeanette Betancourt, and others, we decided to take a child development approach, and we looked at the one element of child development that was universal identity. Next page, please. Next slide. So why are we focusing on young children? We know that children are not born racist. We heard very clearly from our various convenings when we went straight to work and from the audiences as we interacted them through different platforms. Young children are aware of race, whether we talk about it or not. They want to understand their own racial, cultural, and ethnic identity, and they benefit everything from socially, psychologically, and academically when they feel positive about who they are. However, the issue of racism is a challenging one for every single family. Therefore, back to being positive and back to being proactive, we are meeting families where they are. Next slide. For example, one of the key challenges for BIPOC family, Black, Indigenous, people of color, especially the most vulnerable and oppressed, is developing a positive racial, ethnic, and cultural identity. Sometimes you'll see us shorthanding that as REC, and effectively managing racial injustice and trauma within a racist society. Our BIPOC families, for them, we celebrate and aim to understand the perseverance, resilience, and love they have for one another. And we partner with them to help them prepare their children to counter the effects of racism, both personally and systemically, both now and historically. Equally important, next please. is understanding why it's important to start early for our non-BIPOC families. A key challenge for many non-BIPOC families, especially those who identify as white, and I'll pause here to insert that Sesame believes every family gets to identify and name itself. And so with that, we want to understand, if you do identify as white in the US, of how do we replace the negative on certain aspects of being white, a negativity many families often feel as a group most associated with benefits of being privileged and the impact of racial injustice positively on them. Right? That's a hard one. That's latent with everything from guilt to another form of trauma. So for our non-BIPOC families, we aim to help them frame a healthy, anti-racist, whiter privilege REC identity as they develop genuine allyship for racial justice. So our vision. We begin, this is common for everything we do at Sesame. As Rosemarie pointed out, we are grounded in the lives and current experiences of children. We hold a vision of a world where all children can reach their full potential and humanity, and do so in celebration of their race, ethnicity, and culture, and within the community in which they live. Slide. So from that framing, from us honing our voice as an organization, we went to work to outline a developmental framework. We began at our core at 3 to 5, but we are aging up. And I want to walk you through not just what this framework holds, but how we translated this framework. So we lead this work with an educational framework that focuses on the foundational language, understanding and concepts needed to develop healthy and positive identities, upstanders for racial justice for themselves and one another. And I'm telling you, we can't repeat that line often enough because it's key for us, because that's the line, that phrase is a phrase for all children. Next slide. And we can go to the next one. Thank you. So to get us there, we focus on two major components of this educational framework. Leading the way is racial literacy. Racial literacy supports children's developing awareness of the social world around them. It's not just about me, it's about we. This requires specific language, vocabulary, and practices. Racial literacy is more than the words, it's the behaviors that help children understand what to do, what to say, and how to make healthy decisions for themselves and healthy decisions about their relationships with others. Racial literacy forms the foundation of all of our racial justice work. In order to be measurable, we had to outline some concepts and goals. This is where it becomes a developmental progression towards a healthy REC identity and an understanding of racial fairness and ability to act in pro-social ways towards equity within and across communities for both BIPOC and non-BIPOC children. These inform our what we know as the step-by-step and measurable progression. We're only going to give you a peek today for time. So let's go to the next slide. So there are three major concepts that frame our racial literacy and the goals towards racial justice. Concept one is talking about race, ethnicity, and culture. We have to put some language to it. We have to understand and name it. These are the foundational understandings that we need to provide all children. Concept two gets a little bit more focused. These are the tools and strategies. This concept is the building block that allows children to talk about racial justice. These are the racial literacy practices in concept two. Concept three is using our voices for as advocates, not as activists, as advocates towards equity. Next slide, please. So as we pointed out, these concepts are lived by children. And when they're lived by children, we have to understand and articulate what they will know, that's the facts, how children will feel or what they value, those are the attitudes, and what they will be able to do or the actions. So we're going to unpack this for you by starting with concept one, which is all about talking about race, ethnicity, and culture, and with one specific goal in mind. So we have three concepts and multiple goals. Concept one, as a matter of fact, has three goals. This is one of them. for what in this concept, we hope that we work towards children understanding and appreciating feelings about ourselves, our racial identity, and human diversity. That's a big idea. We unpack it through a specific objective. This case, the specific objective is positive self-concept. In order to know we're getting it right, we're going to look at attitude. I am proud of what makes me me. So from this point, we're going to watch a video, and I'll ask you to question how, if we achieve that specific goal of that attitude, what makes me me? So thank you so much. To the next slide. So I hope you believe as we did, as we do, that that particular video did indeed hit the specific objective of positive self-concept. And I think you can see, as we do, that children will walk away from that understanding they are proud of what makes them them. So I will turn it back and welcome Phil back to the conversation with Rosemarie.
Thank you. Thank you, Akimi. Thank you, Rosemarie. Thank you for that wonderful presentation, and giving us those insights and approaches of how you develop things. It's clear the amount of time and effort that is put into everything that you do. And I just wanted to make one comment. At the Henry Ford, we have sort of our own educational framework, and we call it Model I. And we talk about the actions of innovation and the habits of an innovator. And the words, the phrases, the way you all talked about the work that you do, I think you checked off all of the habits of innovators. And so I applaud you for that work, and know that we at the Henry Ford look up to you in those ways, and are really impressed with that. Which is one of the reasons why we're so happy to have you join us tonight. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That actually means a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's great. And so what we want to do now is we have a little bit of time left. And so we've got a few questions. There's still some time to put some questions in the Q&A feature. But I'll roll into some of the questions that we have. And Rosemarie, I want to start with you. Pretty simple, coming off of what you all talked about. What advice do you have for let's focus on parents specifically who might be on here, who are really looking to talk to the little ones about race, ethnicity, and culture? Like, where's a great place to start?
Starting with your child. And I think that's so important. I quote Joan Gans Cooney a lot, because she always reminds us that we should never shy away from tough topics. Children are taking all of this information in, and it's just that they don't know how necessarily to process it all. So how do we approach children where they are? So where they are in terms of what are they truly asking, right? What is that question? Mm-hmm. What age are they, so that you could tailor your talk in an age appropriate way, and to respect them, to respect how they're coming to you with these questions. So when we're talking about race, ethnicity, and culture, young children are very observant. They are they're making observations about what they see. They're watching us, the adults in our lives, to see how we react to what we see and hear. And so they may come with you with a question. And what we have learned through the research is that often when parents don't have the answer, or they don't think that they have the answer, they tend to shut down the question. And thinking that, oh, well, you're too young, you may not be able to handle the answer. But when they ask a very specific question based on what they see, and they are making comments about skin color, parents often will say, shh, we don't talk about that. We're all the same on the inside. The moment we go shh and shut down, the child then is internalizing, I just asked a wrong question. And that's what we don't want. We want parents to be open and to hear what they're asking. And Sesame now is there to provide the language. So we are a resource, we are a tool, and you can see in the videos that we create, we're modeling how you could answer in an age-appropriate way. So that's why we're encouraging everyone to come and use our resources. They're free. So don't shy away. Don't be afraid. You may not get it right, but we're here to help. It's most important that your child feels respected and their observations are being met with a conversation. So Akimi, you probably want to add some other points.
Yeah, I would love to talk to the educators who may be viewing and listening, and Rosemarie, to that point, because one is let's partner with parents, but it's hard not to think about, and Phil, you kind of fueled us with this notion of innovation, to say on the one hand, we want children to be open-minded and curious and follow their questions. If they see something, let's name it and wonder out loud. But when it comes to certain topics that we as adults are uncomfortable with, we shut down that very innocent innocent way of wondering, right? Which is what we want to encourage. So from a child's point, from a child development point of view, they're doing their job. They're asking the question and following the lead just as much as they're wondering, if I turn this cube on this side and tip it, will it work? Will it stay up? And for educators, we have to have an open conversation with families. And so I remember being in a classroom. I was the very first person of this color that this little boy met up close and needed to trust, right? That meant I have to build a relationship for the family. It was new. And educators, we have to make sure that it's a partnership that we're building at the family level. The family culture wins, not just our culture that we put inside our classroom.
Thank you. Yeah, that is super helpful. Especially personally for me, I have a 3.5-year-old at home, and the questions don't stop. And that's awesome. And just to kind of piggyback on this concept, we actually got a really interesting question, and they acknowledge that this could be tough to answer just because there's a lot there, but they were wondering, do either of you think that there has been a most impactful episode in terms of racial justice so far?
Oh, that's a hard one.
Well, I think the special, Akimi, I stop here because when we say the most impactful, I don't have the data to support it, but I could say from my point of view, I think the special was extremely impactful in terms of its explicitness, but more importantly, how we addressed it in a child appropriate way, and how we modeled the adults in the characters' lives, right? So I think that's really important. And I'm really proud that we have not only a human cast, but we also have a Muppet parent cast. And so that would be my selection in terms of what we've done so far. I just want people to know that there's a lot more to come. And so I have there's great promise that there's going to be many more impactful moments, but that's mine for now. Akimi?
Yeah, I'll sandwich that one too with you, and because in many ways it was when we were working as an organization, say, how do we approach this? We had to say out loud to ourselves, if not us, who? Right? Is this our work if we don't do it? And so when there, who will? So in many regards, I see that moment, and that moment was characterized by a special. Maybe that's a way to think about it, Rosemarie, as our granting permission that this is something to be talked about and that children are watching. And how do we, in this media saturated world, if we all remember, there was during COVID. And so the news cycle was on and children were probably being exposed to things that they may not have been if schools were open. So I'm very proud of the organization for leaning in and granting permission for parents to be confused, worried, upset, and for children and to have questions that they didn't answer, and to lean on us and partner with us. I would agree with you, Rosemarie.
And if I could just add, and the fact that it was a special and it went beyond the preschool audience, we really, our goal was to reach families. And, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds are not watching Sesame Street in the usual time slot. That's for their younger siblings. But when you put it on as a family special, it brought the whole family together. And I think that's another reason for its great impact.
Yeah.
Trying to find my unmute button. Thank you for that. Was truly an answer on the fly, and pulling up a catalog of all the things that both of you have worked on over the years was probably a tough one. But thank you for taking a stab at that one, and that's great. I also wanted to mention, because you're referencing a lot of the research and you talked about research. I did notice that on your website you put a lot of these things out there for people to read and reports, and so I just wanted to mention that as Sesame Workshop being a great resource. That's one of the things you can find on their website. I was looking at them earlier, and they're fantastic and give great insights. So thank you for sharing those. All right, I have another question. I'll put this one towards Akimi first. And I think you talked to some of this, but if there's anything you'd like to add, please. What have been some of the challenges that you have faced in starting this work around racial justice? I can't imagine, it sounds like the whole organization went through a culture shift. So, what are some of those maybe internal challenges that you've had, but maybe there's been some external challenges, and, how did you kind of address some of those?
Maybe we'll go from the inside out for a moment. So it's, I don't think there was a person in our world that wasn't affected by what was going on. And so, the 300 some odd Sesame staffers showed up one day, and the organization fueled them with a lot of care and a lot of respect, and we went to work. So one can imagine of doing this hard work when you have been personally affected, and where you have to put your family needs aside for at least 8. And we all know during COVID, there's no such thing as an 8-hour day. It felt like maybe 25 or something. But so in that way, there was a lot of charged energies, and it took a lot of support to do this work. There was a task force that was convened. And so that task force, which is a disparate bodies from across the organization, was holding it steady so we could lean on one another. So we not only were doing new works in new ways, we were actually working with one another in very novel and unique ways. And in that way, getting to know one another very quickly. I had to know Rosemarie's process of how do we look at a script and what's okay to comment on and not comment on, and what would Elmo say. So that was a very fast, I will call it pedagogy, that I had to go through in order to get there. So from that point of view, Rosemarie, thinking about the inside, I wonder if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, and from the inside, we all had to respect each other and understand that this is a journey for all of us. And we wanted to make it a safe place for all of us to have that open dialogue, knowing that we might make some mistakes along the way. And what we tell kids is that mistakes are how we learn. It's okay to make mistakes. We had to internalize that as adults as well. The other piece is this content is for really young children. And so once again, I'm going to go back to our model and the value of the formative research process, where we go to the young children and the parents as well, because we want to see how the parents are interpreting the content that we're creating for their children. And for production to be open, and they are, and they want to get it right. I mean, I am just so honored to work with such amazing, talented people in terms of the writing and the producing and the puppeteering. I mean, they are amazing people who have the mission of Sesame Workshop in their heart, and it's the backbone of everything that they do, and you see it in their performances. And knowing that, we respect children, so when the results come back, it's like, okay, we didn't get it right. We got to fix this one. And they just go back and go back into the script to make sure we get it right. So it's just an honor and a pure joy to be a part of this content process.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think we've got time for one more question. And Rosemarie, I'll come back to you with this one. And we've kind of talked around this a little bit, or referenced it. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic really continues. I mean, it's still affecting all of us, right? And especially over the past year and a half, and coming in now, approaching the next school year and stuff, you know, teaching and learning has particularly been affected too. So, but I kind of want to focus on some positive things, maybe. So, what are some things that you've observed, maybe even experienced over this time? That you think should actually, that came out of this, that you think should continue?
I think one positive thing is to really have a better understanding of mindfulness and how we all need to take care of each other, and what are some of the strategies that we could learn ourselves, but more importantly, share with our children, because it has been a very difficult time. And I think we all need to learn how to regulate these big feelings. And we're having some pretty big feelings on a regular basis. The other positive is we've been home a lot with our kids, and knowing that they don't always need to be saved in a sense that when there's a problem or a challenge, let them take care of it. And I think that's a positive silver lining of COVID, is that we've been so busy at work, our kids are fending for themselves and they're building these wonderful skills. And so that's why this curriculum about approaches to learning, to me, I didn't line it up with COVID. I had no idea. When there's a problem, I wonder, what if, let's try, go learn and see what you could figure out on your own. And I think that's a positive.
I'll add one for educators. Now that parents know and they understand how hard it is, right? And they couldn't wait to give them back to you in that way. Let's keep it as transparent as it was when everyone was remote. Now they have seen it. They really they're ready to be partners. You can't unsee what they saw, and parents are they're trying to lean in. Everybody is, to Rosemarie's point, we're all dealing with our own emotional stress, and that's real, and we're not going to push that aside. But we have true partners now in parents. They saw and they appreciate and they respect, and let's keep them as partners.
Great.
Yeah, that's some great insight, and thank you for sticking to the positivity of it all, because it has been tough for all of us, I think. That understatement of the year for sure. So we're pretty much
18 months, Phil. 18 months. Okay, yeah. Not a year.
How? Yeah. What day is it? What month
exactly?
Is it? So with that being said, we're want to be respectful of both of your time and everybody else. We know it's, for me, I'm sure being at home, I can hear the pitter patter of feet and dinner and such. And I'm sure everybody else has that too. So I just want to say one more time, thank you, Akimi. Thank you, Rosemarie, for being with us tonight. Thank you for sharing your insights, your wisdom, your knowledge, your journey to all of us. I found it incredibly insightful, valuable. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and for the innovation nod. We appreciate it.
Yes, that means a lot. Thank you.
Well, we did record this, so now you have it. It's recorded. You can show it to whoever needs to hear it. But there you go. And then I just want to talk to all the folks who attended tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. I just want to give a FYI, as I just mentioned, this webinar was recorded. It will be available through the Henry Ford's YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Henry Ford, and also through our inHub educational platform. It will be available for a limited time. There'll be more details about how long and whatnot in an email, a follow-up email coming to you. So keep an eye out for that. And also please share this with fellow parents and fellow educators who might find this conversation valuable. Lastly, thank you again for joining us. Thank you to our speakers. We look forward to seeing you at the next conversation. So stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful evening, everyone. Take care. Bye now.